Yeah, it was crazy. I was like, wow, mom guilt within the first couple hours of the baby being born. And it's intense. You definitely feel like I already fucked up this child. And it's because I don't have the right nipple shape. And I'm tired and I don't really want to learn right now, but I have to.
Welcome to the Birth Education Center podcast, hosted by myself, Care Messer, an entrepreneur, birth educator, and doula. My team and I want to help you discover your options in birth and postpartum, how to find your voice, and how to use that voice to navigate our maternal healthcare system. You and your baby are not just a number. This information includes doulas too. Now let's get started. Welcome back to today's show. We have Mac Toohey here, and you guys, I'm so excited to have Mac on. Dr. Toohey is who I will call her because she's also my naturopath. And her birth story is freaking incredible. How she prepared for birth is freaking incredible. And what you're going to learn in this episode, there's so many tidbits that you're going to learn. I can't even prepare you for it. But Mac, if you don't mind giving your contact information at the front so that if people want to get a hold of you, they don't have to dig through the whole episode for it. Can you just tell us how we can find you right at the top?
Yeah, of course. You can find me at my website, www.drmactoohey.com, or you can send me an email at drmactoohey@gmail.com. I'm pretty responsive and I'd love to connect with you guys.
And I will obviously put that in the show notes, but welcome, Mac. I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk about this with you. You were a huge part of my birth story, and I just can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, I can't wait to, you guys, I have to tell you this. When I went to drop off her placenta pills at her house, there were glass vases everywhere. I can't even tell you how many of them. They all had candles in them. And she's like, oh yeah, we had it all lit up. And as I'm looking at this, it was like a production studio. There were so many candles. And I thought, oh my gosh, the scene that this must have looked like. Anyways, I can't wait to get into the birth story part too. So can we start with how you prepared for birth? Because as a doctor, you knew way more things than we know of how to prepare. And I think that's going to offer a lot for people when they're thinking about giving birth that current families can be sharing with their friends who are thinking about starting their families.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a story that I don't think I've shared with you yet, but I'll back it up real quick to med school. So in med school, when we're learning about how to prep a woman's body for conception, we are told if they're not in a hurry, we want ideally 6 months so we can detox all the crap that they've accumulated out of their bodies. If they're in a hurry and they want to get pregnant like yesterday, then we have to skip the detox part, which I think is a really big disservice to a lot of women because it doesn't set the first child up for success because they typically get all the junk from the mom, which is passed vertically from mom to baby. So I always knew going into when I wanted to conceive that I was going to need to do a heavy detox. I didn't know if it was going to be 6 months or if it was going to be 8 months or what. But one night I was in San Diego and I was with a bunch of my girlfriends from med school. And we went to this restaurant called Seven House. I don't know if it's still there, but they are like a spiritual type vegan, vegetarian restaurant. And it has some other options, but most of my girlfriends are vegans. That's why we went there. And they had a tarot card reader. And so
it sounds like an ideal dinner to me, by the way.
Yes. And I'd never had a tarot card reading before. So I had seen like tarot cards and like played with them. You tap them, you ask a question, you have a grid. And so I'd done it myself, but I'd never paid somebody to do a reading for me. And so one of my girlfriends goes up and she's gorgeous. She's told you can have any man that you want, the man that you want right now. He'll leave his wife for you because she has a crush on this guy. And she comes back and she's like, this reader is legit. So I'm like so excited because I'm thinking I'm going to be told like this great destiny. And so I go up and I walk up to the lady and it's 9:30 at night. And she's like, oh, I told them I didn't want another person coming up. And I'm like, oh, like totally fine. We do not need to do this conversation. And she goes, no, let's just do it. You're already sitting at my table. So I'm like trying to back out of it.
I don't want you, but I guess if you need your destiny read, I can do that for you.
Yeah. And I'm stuck in this hard place. I'm like, I can leave. I can absolutely get out of here. But she's shuffling her cards and she's like, no, let's just do this. And I'm like, all right. She says it will be quick. So she's like, do you have a specific question you want to ask? And I go, no, just let the cards fold because I knew that lingo. So she lets the cards fold and she is just rambling on about how tired she is. And all these cards are like falling out and she's like not picking them up. And I know a little bit about tarot and I think that you pick up the ones that fall out and they mean something, but I could be wrong. But she decides, like, she just starts using the ones that she's looking at and she puts it down. And so I get 3. And she tells me, okay, you have dead ovaries. You're not going to be able to get pregnant. Just like out of the blue. And I just sat there wide eyed and I looked at her and I go, oh, I thought I was going to get told that I'm like an Egyptian princess from like a past life, or like I'm going to be a millionaire because my friend just got this epic reading that she can have any guy that she wants. No, I have dead ovaries. And so I was very taken aback. And I'm like, I would love to learn how you know that, right, from this spread. And so there's like a card of a flower, and one, it looks like a uterus. And one of the ovaries is like dead, and the other one is blossoming. And she goes, maybe not both your ovaries have failed, but one of them has. Like, you're not going to get pregnant easily on your own. You're going to need to do IVF or IUI. And don't worry, like, you can absolutely get pregnant on IVF or IUI. I'm a surrogate. I've been a surrogate for 3 people who can't get pregnant because I'm so fertile. And I'm just like, I feel like I'm getting like trauma dumped on, but also experiencing my own trauma at that very same second. And I was just like, okay, thanks. And she asked me for a tip. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know if I want to tip you.
So she only read the one card. She didn't read the other 2?
That was the focus. You got to ask one question. And I said, let the cards fold. So I got, okay, well, you have dead ovaries. You're going to have a hard time getting pregnant. So of course I walked back to my friends and all my friends were like so excited to see like what I'm going to say. And I just start crying and they're like, oh no, we're in this.
So traumatizing. Why did you make me do that?
Like, I don't know if she's legit, but if she's legit, that sucks. So I was mortified. And I'm so lucky that I'm really close with a lot of the girls that I went to school with. And they're like, if you want a baby, we will get you pregnant. And I'm like, oh, I've always said I want a dragon baby. Like, I want a baby that's born in the year of the dragon. I've always said that. I've been with my partner at this point for 15 years. I said, I will get pregnant when it's the year before so we can have a dragon baby. And he just is along for the ride. He doesn't really care that I get woo-woo like that. So I was like, well, you know, it's March at this point and we weren't going to get pregnant until later. So now I need to look into my fertility now. Like I actually need to do this a lot sooner. So I got some tests run by my friend and overseeing MD, and I received my report back and everything looked pretty good. My FSH looked great. It was below 10. It was actually at a 6, which is optimal. My LH was 2 to 1, so above it, so which was really good. So that was optimal as well. My estradiol, progesterone, testosterone, everything looked good, but not my anti-Müllerian hormone, which is a test run in fertility clinics to see how many eggs you have left. You know, I didn't want to say it, but I was like, damn, she's right. Maybe I do have a failing ovary. And so it was a big blow to my ego, I have to say, because here I am trying to preach health and didn't get this test or this marker checked out because I didn't think that I would need to get it checked out because I thought that I was like healthy. And we are born with a set amount of eggs and they decline with age. And so I did know that, but I didn't realize that I would have the acceleration to the point that I did. So my AMH was a 0.04. Under 1 is very low, especially for a 30-year-old. And so I instantly was like, nope, I'm not going to accept this diagnosis. I am going to use it as a tool and increase it. But all this research is telling me you can't possibly increase your AMH counts. And I'm like, well, I just don't believe that. I like to take what someone says you can't do and prove it wrong. So then I'm looking into how to increase my egg quality. If I can't increase my quantity, how do I increase my egg quality? And how do I still prepare for my baby so I'm not passing on all this crap to it? So I am going down deep rabbit holes. I'm finding out that it's really working on the mitochondria, a lot of antioxidants, working on my mental, emotional, my relationship with my partner, because stress can really deplete AMH. For somebody who hasn't been on birth control, I need to actually say that as well. Birth control can suppress AMH. And once you're off birth control for 3 months, it usually goes back up. I haven't been on birth control since I was in my early 20s. So that was not part of my history.
But isn't that amazing? Because you weren't like advanced maternal age, you were 30. Our environment is so freaking dirty and toxic. Holy cow.
Yes. And I found out I am O negative. I found out O blood people tend to have lower egg counts, is what they've seen in the literature. And so I thought that was interesting too. I don't really know how it correlates, but I'm like, okay, at least it's something a little bit genetically, or because my mom's O negative as well. But my mom had me at 42. And I know that doesn't mean that I can have kids at 42, but I'm thinking, oh, I'm good.
Right.
She had 4 kids and I was her last one. She had me at 42. Like, she's fertile. We're fertile. Nope. So I am doing everything and anything. I'm doing acupuncture. I only did 2 rounds of it actually, though, because I was flying back and forth between San Diego and San Francisco between my 2 clinics. And I just really focused on taking CoQ10 400 milligrams, so a very high dose, which is seen throughout the literature if you're trying to increase your egg quality. Resveratrol, which is a really powerful antioxidant, along with CoQ10. And CoQ10 is also an antioxidant. And then a prenatal. So I'm taking Needed. I don't know if you're familiar with that prenatal. I love that prenatal. I just think it's so great. So I'm taking 4 of those in the morning and 4 in the evening because I just didn't want to take 8 all at once. So while I'm just trying to prep for conception. And then I started doing the other tests. Okay, so what is bogging me down? How is my gut health? How is my toxic load? So now I know that I can work on increasing the quality, but what was taking down the quantity of my AMH?
And for those of you who've never been to a naturopath, like my experience with especially Dr. Toohey is the stuff that she runs is so different than what Kaiser ran for me. I had to fight with Kaiser to run for me. They wouldn't. And what she found has gotten me in optimal health. Just the medical model is so narrow focused on we can give you a pill for that. And they don't look at everything else. There's a lot to this and it's worth every penny, like every penny.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate that the medical industry, no doctor goes into the healthcare field not wanting to help people. Everyone wants to help people. That's their calling, but their hands are tied with insurance companies, and Kaiser is part of that. So if they don't have a medical reason that they can prove why your insurance should cover it, they're not going to order it for you because they specifically have to follow an algorithm. But we're human beings. We all come with our own fingerprints, our own blueprints of like our immune systems, our gut. We get passed down stuff from epigenetics. So we aren't a one size fits all. So there really needs to be a turn in the medical model of not just doing an algorithm and following testing for specific things. We want to do disease prevention because I wish I had done these tests on myself before I was even considering getting pregnant. I thought I was fine. I thought I had already done all the testing and that had come back okay. But nope, I needed to do a gut test because the mom can pass the gut microbiome down to the baby. So I knew I needed to do that regardless. But I also wanted to see if certain foods were starting to hurt me because I was doing elimination diets and I was able to determine specific foods that my body doesn't like. But I wanted to see how my organs were working as a whole in my gastrointestinal tract through the stool analysis that we ran. And the stool analysis that functional medicine doctors or naturopathic doctors run versus a conventional allopathic MD is we don't do the acute bacteria or parasites or viruses. We do the acute bacteria, like E. coli that you get from Montezuma's Revenge from Mexico, or norovirus if you're down in Mexico as well, in Sayulita. We don't just focus on that. We look at the other exposures that you could have, like Pseudomonas aeruginosa, Bacillus spp, and Klebsiella. So there could be good bacteria that are in too heavy of amounts that are causing disease or disbalance. And there can be bad bacteria that shouldn't be in there regardless. So they crept in somehow either through contaminated utensils, contaminated food, or swapping saliva with your partner or your one night stand. So we can't always figure out the exposure to where we developed or where we had picked up these hitchhikers. But once we know that they are in our guts and how our body is responding to them, it's really important to remove them because you are going to pass that to your baby. And 70% of your immune system is in your gut. And so if you don't have a good microbiome and you pass that down to your baby, you might have a kiddo that is frequently sick or has food intolerances like eczema, psoriasis. We see a lot of autoimmune and allergies with our kids today. And there's so many reasons for that, but one of the components is the microbiome. So I looked at that and my gut was messed up, which I had no idea. I didn't really have symptoms of having a messed up gut. I had rosacea, like I've had rosacea my whole life, but I go to the bathroom twice a day. It's well formed, easy to pass, no gas, no bloating. And so I'm thinking I'm okay in the gut department. No, I had opportunistic bugs that took up vacancy in my large intestine or my colon, and I needed to kick them out. And then I also had something called Akkermansia, which is a commensal or regularly occurring bacteria that we want in our gut that was below detectable limit. So, how I like to explain Akkermansia is it is the guard of your gut lining. So, when the guards are on holiday or they've been depleted through other opportunistic bacteria or parasitic infections, etc., if we don't have enough of that, we have a higher chance of a leaky gut. So the guards aren't able to keep the gut lining like this, and we see more of a porous where food particles can go in and out of the gut. And then that can cause immune reactions in the blood, such as like a food sensitivity response. So I needed to do a remove protocol to get these opportunistic bugs out of my body and then replete the below detectable limit microbes that are the cornerstones of my health. So that was one of my steps, which is the long program. It can take up to 3 to 6 months to get the gut back to normal. The remove protocol typically takes 8 weeks. Some doctors do 6. I think let's just round it out and do 8. And then you have to rebalance, re-inoculate, so put the good bacteria back in, and then work on diet so then you can make sure this doesn't happen again. So we did that. And I also looked at heavy metal exposure. And I was a tuna sandwich fanatic. Do you like a tuna sandwich or pokey?
So do I.
Yeah. Tuna are predatory fish, meaning that they eat other fish. And so when they eat another fish, they take in their mercury. So now they're accumulating the mercury from the fish that is from their diet. And those fish will eat other fish. And it's just this cascade of just picking up other people's toxicities. And so when we consume the tuna, we're picking up the mercury that the tuna has accumulated. So I used to eat tuna sandwiches like twice a week in college. And so I had a high mercury content when I did my testing. So I knew I needed to do a chelation diet, and I can eat tuna up to 2 times a month. That's typically the recommendation. Same with swordfish, like any type of shark, any type of like high mercury predatory fish. I still do that. I had my tuna at sushi on Friday for the month of June.
Check it off your list. That's it.
Yep. And I had to do a chelation protocol. I'm lucky that I was working at a facility where we do IV chelation. So I was able to do that for some of the protocol, but also just do oral chelation. So it's 3 days of taking EDTA or DMSA, depending on the high heavy metal count you have, and doing that for a series of 12 weeks.
And did any of these protocols, were they ever make you sick or feel yucky, like trying to get rid of that stuff, like lethargic or?
Totally. Yeah. You don't feel great when you're mobilizing toxins from the tissues, but there's ways to mitigate that. So being extremely hydrated, taking binders, getting a sweat in. For me, I have to do lymphatic drainage. I have the MTHFR or the motherfucker gene. So
I.
Yep. High five. 49% of the population has it. And so that's a pretty staggering percent of people that aren't able to process their environment. So as long as I was increasing my lymphatic drainage, jumping on a trampoline called rebounding, which I loved. I had so much fun. That was like my inner child. I was like, oh, I'm healing, but I'm also like letting my inner child come out.
And then I have a vibration plate, which is fun.
I thought you were going to say vibrator for a second. Like, care.
Yeah, I have a full body vibrator is what it is, actually. It's really fun, and it's pink, so it makes me get on it because it's pretty.
Cool. Do you have a hard time getting off of that? Do you step on it and then you're like, how do I get off? No, okay.
Because mine's timed, so it does 10 minutes, and then it shuts off, and then I just take a second before I'm a little shaky when I get off, but now I'm so used to it. I love it.
Oh, cool. I need to get myself one of those. I tried one at a medical convention, and I was like, how do I get off of this thing?
Yeah, it's fun. I look forward to it.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so that's another great way to detox. And it's just biohacking and trying to figure out different ways to move the lymph because our lymph doesn't have a circulatory system. So the way that we move it is by lymphatic drainage, lymphatic massage, dry skin brushing. So I like to call the lymph your body's trash cans. And so if your trash cans are overflowing, you need to dump them out. And so how you do that is I like the Eastern way of lymphatic brushing because it's cheap. It's $5 off of Amazon. And so you don't have to get the vibration plate. You don't have to get the rebounder that's $130, the trampoline. So anyone can do this at home that is on a budget. And so you dry skin brush towards your heart, starting with the arms, then the chest, and then you work your way to the stomach, the legs, the butt, and all the way down to the feet. In Western medicine, you start from the feet and you work up. But I just feel like you're just adding more crap to the trash cans that are already overflowing. So why don't you take out the trash cans at the top and then work your way that way? So I like the Eastern approach of that. But that has always been a big help for me for detoxification. So even if people like can't afford to go see a functional medicine doctor, you can dry skin brush at your house. Just make sure that you take a shower afterwards. You typically will feel a boosted energy, especially if you aren't a great detoxer, but your skin will look good. You'll be less inflamed, less puffy. So it
Isn't that
works.
what the gua sha does for your
Yeah.
face when you're
Yeah.
using that?
Exactly, exactly. Oh my gosh, the face has the most lymph nodes. So it's really great to detox that, but you need to be careful. Some people have a really big reaction to that because we don't always touch the face. So opening up the drainage pathways by touching the different lymphs and just poking them. There's tons of videos out there on YouTube that you can follow for that. I just think that's something that everyone should be doing at least once a week. So that was most of my detox situation was, okay, how do I get the heavy metal exposure out of my body? How do I decrease my toxic load with the diet that I eat? I already followed an organic diet. I don't buy everything organic. That's just not feasible for me. I just buy the things that are in the top 12, the dirty dozen. So those absolutely have the highest pesticides, herbicides exposure. There are some that have always been the same. The EWG, or the Environmental Working Group, does this analysis every June. I wish they did it in January because I'm like ready for it. I'm like, okay, what is it this year? They just came out with the new one for 2025 and it's actually changed a little bit. There's two new foods that are really high in pesticides and herbicides. So it's good to stay up to date with that and have a list on your phone. So if you are going to not buy organic, just make sure it's not any of the dirty dozen. And then they also have a clean 15 that are, you don't need to buy organic at all. So you can just make sure that you wash them when you get home. Obviously, eating organic and reducing pesticides, herbicides, glyphosate exposure is ideal, but it's just not financially feasible for everybody. So I just think that's a really good starting point, is just knowing your exposures and how you can reduce it. So also my husband loved this, but no shoes on in the house. Like, you're not allowed to bring dirt into the house because I'm scared I'm picking up more stuff, like being barefoot in my house, because that's one way to get parasites and other bacteria into your body. We did a full transition of no plastic at all, which I've always tried to get out, but now I had a reason of, you absolutely cannot be cooking a meal in plastic. And finally, he was able to see that because I had data points with the AMH.
Give a little bit of background for that because so many people still
Mm.
put everything in a Ziploc. They freeze in a Ziploc. They've got plastic containers. They are buying plastic containers from the grocery store with their frozen food in it, and they're cooking it in that.
Yeah.
Like, you're eating full on credit cards every week.
Yes, absolutely. So plastic is a known endocrine disruptor. So it looks specifically like estrogen. So we have these receptors that are in these various shapes. And so these different molecules can only have an affinity to that certain receptor. The microplastics are the same exact shape as the estrogens. And so they will bind to the receptor and the body is just binding to plastic, which is insane. So then we have more hormone disruption. People have a harder time of getting pregnant. We see more endometriosis. We see more PCOS. So different reproductive health declining because of these microplastics that are in our bodies. And unfortunately, microplastics are just very hard to get away from. Don't touch a receipt. The BPA in a
Oh, it's
receipt
so
is
bad for you.
so bad.
Receipts. Ugh.
If you work at a grocery store, if you work at like somewhere that has a receipt, wear gloves, just limit your exposure. You still got to get that money. So I get it. It's just little tweaks in how you can reduce it. Eating everything out of glass, because glass is inert. So that means that when sunlight hits it or it's heated up, the particles in the glass won't leak or leach into the food or the drink that you are consuming. Plastic, on the other hand, when it's heated up, so either from a hot car or on your backpack, if you bring your food to work and you leave it in a hot environment and it starts to heat up and you see the moisture, that is more likely you're getting the plastic into your food. And then you also pass that to your baby. And I'm sure you probably know way more about this than I do, but they're finding microplastics in the umbilical cords.
And if you think about it, we get a water bottle, we're like, "It's always been cold." I'm like, "But it's been in a hot truck. It's been in a hot warehouse. Walmart set it outside in the heat for 6 weeks before you ever bought it." Like,
Yes.
water bottles, that's the first thing I did was get rid of all of that. Holy cow. And then even you have to be careful with the metal containers because you're like the cheap ones have all sorts of crap in them. You really have to do your due diligence with all that. And I've done a ton of research on that because I am with pregnant people and they have questions about that. Everything needs to be researched now because we make such cheap products.
Yeah, it's fast and convenient, but not in the long term. And I completely agree with you with the water bottle situation. You think that you're doing yourself well, and then you realize, wait, I might have a lot of microplastics in my body. And they love to accumulate to the brain too. So there's different people thinking of like neurological diseases that we're seeing.
I'm thinking dementia and all the stuff because that is literally what's causing some of it.
Yes, as well as the glyphosate exposure and like the spraying of crops. Like if you're next to a golf course or a strawberry field, you have a higher risk of getting Parkinson's dementia. So the detoxification goes beyond just fertility. It's really for longevity and increasing not just your lifespan, but your health span. You want to feel good while you're here. You don't want to be bogged down with just low energy, depressed mood, joint pain. You want to be feeling optimal and limitless, like you were when you were 12, hopefully, if you weren't a sick kiddo.
Right.
So that's always the goal. But I also think you and I were chatting before we started this conversation. It's not just the female that needs to detox, it's the guy that needs to detox. And I thought you said it beautifully. So why do you think the guy needs to detox?
Well, what the research is showing and what I am seeing too in just with the people that I work with, we don't give credit for the semen, the sperm, whether it's from a donor or from our partner. That's 50% of the genetic makeup of your baby. That's what starts the placenta growing. That's what's forming the system that's going to support your baby. If your dude or the semen that you've purchased was not detoxed and there was no consciousness into the nutrition and all of that, you're getting preeclampsia at the end of your pregnancy and you're feeling like, oh, my body's broken and nothing works for me. And I'm like, yeah, guess where that comes from? That's from his crappy diet, thinking I just show up for the day and whatever, because there was no intention behind it. Just as we need to prepare, we need to also have our partners be prepared and really look for that if we're purchasing semen, because that is 50% of genetic makeup of your baby and the support system. Like we're finding that miscarriages a lot of times are from that. It's the early miscarriage because it wasn't going to support a baby. But yet women walk around with this burden of I'm a failure and my body doesn't work. And it's like, you know what? There are some things that we need to tweak here.
Yeah.
So do not think that it's just a one-shot deal and everything's fine, because a lot of it can be that.
Yeah, it's so crazy. Back in the day, we used to think that if the female couldn't produce a male heir for kingdoms, it was the female's fault. But we know today that you get the X chromosome from the mom, and then you get the X or the Y, so the male or the female from the dad. And now we're still all like in this like archaic train of thought where we think it's still just all the mom and she needs to put in all the work. I think that what you just said makes so much sense. And for me, knowing that it takes 120 days for you to have an egg, like the proper egg. So you want at least 4 months of working on the egg quality. But for guys, it's like around like 72, maybe 90 days. I need to relook up the when the spermatogenesis is. I'm pretty sure it's 72. But so that's still they need to put in the work to exactly what you were saying, have that detoxification, make sure that their genes are working properly. You can always turn on and off genes. It's not like a death sentence of the genes that you get. There's some caveats with that, but it's really working with your biology and detoxing the world that the male has picked up as well. And I think it's crazy that so many women get preeclampsia and they do think that it's from them. And more research now is coming out that it is the man. And so if the male does the same amount of work as the female to prepare for the body for their future child, Can you imagine how successful and healthy the next generation would be? It would be such a beautiful thing to witness.
Well, and there's random things too, like those car air fresheners are so bad for you. And they're so bad for men. The pseudo estrogens in those are horrible. And that can affect men's fertility. Look up male fertility rates in the world right now. They're shooting down because of all the crap in our environment. A lot of the women that can't get pregnant, they're not getting the guys tested right away. And that should be number one. Let's test and make sure everything's okay. And then let's detox and do what we need to do. But there's no consciousness or thought going into that.
Yeah, absolutely. I made my husband get tested because I was like, if I'm getting tested, you got to get tested. I want to know straight up what we're up against. And so I didn't know today that you could order a home kit and have it sent to your house, and then you can ship it back for your semen analysis to see the quality, the quantity, the shape of the semen or the sperm. So I made my husband go into a facility, and his story on that, it cracked me up because it made me feel seen. I'm like, okay, well, he was given a magazine, he was given a computer and a reclining chair. And
Oh, I love it.
and it wasn't enclosed walls. There's a gap in between the ceiling and the walls. And so he could hear everything that the receptionists were talking about outside. And he was like, I just don't even know how to get in the mood for this. And I'm just thinking that's the most traumatic experience you've had for your reproductive health. Meanwhile, we have to get pap smears and all
And
of these
all the things.
all the things. And so we had a good laugh about it. But there are kits now that you can ship off from the comfort of your home. Also, there are facilities that if you live pretty close, they'll allow you to do it at home and then bring it there. You'd know more about that than me. So we did that. And he came back with super sperm. So he had really good super sperm. And I don't know if that's because of the things that we had done together of like he eats what I eat. And so that's been really great. But he also has had to do his own detoxification before. And because his family goes gray at age 30. And so we've been together since we were 17. And I'm like, I don't think that is like the trajectory that you need to accept. I think that shows that you have nutritional deficiencies and you probably have messed up detox pathways. And luckily, we've been able to work on that together so then he could prep for the baby. And he had super sperm, which was really great. His testosterone was a little bit lower than it should have been. Men, I just talked to another male. He has a 300 free total testosterone, and I forget what the free was, but that is low for a morning testosterone. Testosterone naturally declines throughout the day, but you're optimally in between like your 20s to 30s. You want it between 600 to 900, not 300. And he's being told, oh, you're fine. But they're having fertility issues. I'm like, okay, why is he having low T? If you put him on T, he can't get pregnant because that decreases your fertility. So it's this catch 22. So you really want this like optimal time, not I wanted to get pregnant yesterday. You really want to be able to prep like at least a year or two in advance so then you can make the corrections that you need to because healing does take time. It's not a quick fix.
And if you're doing that, you can also get the right insurance for the kind of birth you want. You can pick your doctor differently. There's so many things you can do on the whole to put conscious effort into what's the best birth for this baby. We're working on all the genetics. Why not make sure in your area you've got the top birth center or whatever you want, but it's covered by insurance because you took some time to plan. There's a lot that you can do. You don't have to be at a birth center, you can be at the hospital, but be with the best providers for your family because you took the time to research that ahead of time.
Yeah, amen. And I'm so lucky I was able to research. I found you, like the best birth center in, I think, the country. I found Dr. Cap, who accepted my insurance. And so I was able to go to the hospital if I needed to, and I needed to. So, yeah, I think that's a really good point because a lot of women, and you would know this way more than me, but so many women come out with not having the birth experience that they had dreamed of. And that can cause a lot of inner turmoil and disappointment, even after postpartum. And postpartum is such a heavy time on its own. And if you can just mitigate anything that you do have control over, that would be ideal.
And they have bad pregnancies. They hate every bit of it, you know, and it's like some of that can be mitigated. Understanding what the nutrition levels need to be and understanding your body and know you've done everything you could ahead of time. There's so many things we could do if we were conscious about it instead of like, yep, going to get pregnant. And we don't even know what kind of birth we want because we don't even know what our options are.
Yeah, I felt like I learned so much from your course coming out of it. I didn't know what I didn't know. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I know nothing about what I needed to be preparing for. So shout out, definitely take her course. I send everyone to you.
So you've done all this prep, you and your husband, and now you're coming into class. What were your fears and worries about birth and labor or anything like that? What did you come in with?
I don't have a problem speaking up for myself. I know in your class, you work a lot around that. And that was really helpful for my husband. He needed to be my champion. He needed to be able to speak for me and control the room. I have no problem telling someone what I want, but that's just because of the field that I work in. So when you are with nurses and you're in a hospital setting, there is a hierarchy that you don't really understand until you're placed within it. And then you think that they know what's best for you, but that's not true. You know what's best for you. And so my preconceived notion of what I had a lot of fear around was I would tell people I was pregnant and they would tell me about their miscarriages or how they got to term and the baby died. And I was like, why is every single person that's their first answer to me? Not congratulations.
Let me trauma dump on you because that's what I'm going to do right now. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember talking to you about it in the first class and you gave me, we just decided let's not allow that energy to come in. And so then I didn't tell anyone I was pregnant for a very long time. I didn't post it until I had my belly showing because I was so scared that I was going to make my fears come true, that I was going to lose this baby. And I had a subchorionic hematoma within the first trimester. And so what that is, I had bleeding in between the uterine wall and the chorions, one of the membranes of the placenta. And it's a breakage of blood vessels. And so you accumulate blood. So that's like a hemorrhage, or some doctors like to call it like a bruise. And it's usually seen on ultrasound, and a lot of women are asymptomatic. But if you have bright red blood and you're not having a miscarry, it could be an SCH. And so I thought I was having a miscarry at 10 weeks. And I messaged my OBGYN. I originally was like in between seeing a midwife and an OBGYN, and my midwife had just gone on vacation for the month of February. She doesn't take off any other time of the year. And as soon as she takes off, I start having bright red blood. And my colleagues and girlfriends are like, okay, if you're not having any cramping, that's a good sign, but you should still text your doctor. I wasn't sure if it was an emergency and I didn't want to use that line if it wasn't an emergency. Women, use the line. You're not a problem. You're not a burden. Use the line. So I messaged him and he was pretty happy that it wasn't too much blood at that moment. But throughout the night, I kept bleeding more and more. And it was a Friday. So he was like, check back in on Monday. If not, I'll see you in your appointment in 2 weeks. And I'm like, that's too long for me to be having bright red blood, no cramping, but I'm thinking I'm losing this baby. And
It's so stressful. I've had one of those before.
it's so stressful. And you're doing Dr. Google. And we tell people not to do Dr. Google, but you'll do anything to have information and make an informed decision. So I'm lucky in the sense of I was able to reach out to my family member who had had some experience with threatened miscarriages. And so she told me that I could order a ultrasound as a patient, but insurance won't cover it. So it was $120 and I was like, worth it. I'm doing it. So I was able to get in the next morning and confirm that I still had a heartbeat. But what the hell is this SCH? They told me it would dissolve on its own. Then I'm a firm believer of patients know more than doctors in a lot of ways because they live that experience. So I went on Facebook to find a SCH group so I could see what they've done in the past, what research they've seen. That was a little bit of a trigger warning because SCHs can push the baby out if it doesn't dissolve on its own. And so it is still a threatened miscarriage until it dissolves. So I then found all this research. I was going through it for weeks and I found nothing that was confirmed from my OBGYN. When I brought it to his attention and I said, can I do progesterone suppositories? Can I drink pomegranate juice to boost the blood circulation? Can I take alpha lipoic acid and hyaluronic acid to repair the tissues? He was like, I know nothing about that. I'm not going to say yes because I don't know anything, which is an informed decision on his end. But I had my informed decisions from reading all this medical literature. And I'm like, I'm going to do it. I have nothing to lose except my baby. So I did 200 milligrams of vaginal progesterone suppositories. His guidance was no physical activity. I was basically half bedridden, no sex, no toys, no masturbation outside because you don't want to increase the circulation too much to the point where you bleed more and have a higher risk of a threatened miscarriage. I did this for about a month and I was able to dissolve the SCH. So I'm pretty sure, yes, it could have been a multitude of it, but I had already done the rest for a month by myself and I didn't see any improvements. And then adding in the suppositories and adding in all the rest, I really do think was super beneficial. And there is medical literature out there that's supporting that treatment. So SCHs are very common, more common than we know, but we just don't understand why they're created. So again, don't take no for an answer. You can raise your AMH, you can dissolve your SCHs. You just have to be intentional and know where to look.
Fantastic.
So that was a big fear, was losing my baby either from my own stress or from the SCH.
Even though you know that your baby's healthy, you've done as much genetic prepping as you could for that. Okay, so let's get into your birth story. Like, how did that all start? We've gone through classes. Spencer asked a lot of questions. We had a lot of dialogue back and forth. He was very inquisitive, which is good because he gave life to the other guys to talk, which I loved.
Yeah, birth story. In your class, you set us up with all this great knowledge, but you still have this preconceived notion of what you see on TV, like your water's going to break. And then that's how you know you're in labor. And just seeing that my whole life, I really thought my water was going to break. And then
And it doesn't matter how I say, it can be anything. It could be this, it could be that. Everyone's like, yeah, but every time Hollywood does a video,
it's so true though.
They must know something you don't know. Okay.
I'm like, there's a sequence. No, there's no sequence at all. So I was in bed and my due date is August 23rd. It's August 7th. And I'm in bed and I start feeling like period cramps. And I'm like, that's weird. I wonder if this is indigestion or whatever. There's so many things that come with the third trimester of you just being so uncomfortable. But I kept having the period cramps, which I then realized were contractions 10 minutes apart. And then they would go down to 4 minutes. And then they would stay at 4 minutes for 45 minutes. And so I'm like, okay, I just got to get to that hour. and then I can go. Nope, it would go back to 7 minutes. It would go back to 10 minutes. And so I'm thinking, okay, am I in early labor? What the hell is this? My husband needed to go to work the next morning and he's like, do you want me to stay with you? And I'm like, no, I don't think I'm having a baby. I think what I saw online is it's a pseudo contraction.
Yeah, or it's prodromal labor, like baby's just figuring out their position or whatever.
Yeah. And so I'm like, I'm in pseudo labor, go to work, have fun. I'll just see you when you get home. I don't want to cry wolf and you miss work and then not be able to come out when I actually need you. So I had labored through the night, couldn't sleep because it was happening every 3 to 4 minutes of the contractions. And so by 11 a.m. on August 8th, I called him. I'm like, yeah, you need to come home. I'm like, it's getting more intense. It's not unbearable. And I kept thinking, you'll know when you're in labor. People say that. And I'm like, okay, I don't know if I'm in labor. I think I'm in pseudo labor and I don't even know what that means. And so he comes home and then my good friend who I went to school with, she's also a doula. She's been at tons of births. She messages me. Her and my husband are really close. And she's like, excuse me, I heard you're in labor. Like, you're supposed to text me. And I'm like, nope, I'm in pseudo labor. Don't come. I'll let you know when it gets worse.
He doesn't know. He's not in this body. This isn't real labor.
This can't be real. It doesn't hurt as much as I thought it would. And you're preparing to have you ride through the ride. Like, I have all my tools. I know how to ride through that contraction. It wasn't to that point where I felt like I needed to ride it. We set up the whole area, which is what you saw, all of the voltives or hurricane candles.
Hurricanes. You guys, do you have pictures of that? Because it was phenomenal. I was like, ooh, this is like the engagement dinner kind of hurricanes. Yeah, it was amazing.
Well, you said set the mood.
Well, some of us said it differently because that was, wow, that was engagement, top tier. It was amazing. I'm like, I couldn't even afford that many hurricanes, nor would I be able to store them. There was that many, you guys.
So many. I got them off of Facebook weddings, off of Marketplace. And I'm like, that's what I want. So we had a ton of them. It was hot. I don't know about August 8th, having all of those hurricane voltives lit. It was hot in there, but at least it was pretty. And I had my jammy playlist, not for the intense part. It was a buildup. I had this whole playlist that I had been working on since I had taken your class of how I wanted the stages to go, because I knew that's what I needed in that time. I'm on my birthing ball and I'm getting into different positions. My friend had a rope that I was able to hold on to. She was able to do the shimmy thing with the
shake the apples with the reposo. Mm-hmm.
And oh my God, she was a godsend. Spencer had practiced in your class, but she was so good.
Yeah, doulas know what they're doing.
So Spencer would be pushing on my hips and he'd be like, how is it? I'm like, it's great, but can you go get me water? Sydney, come come push. You're really good at it. But we didn't tell Spencer that until way later because we wanted him to feel like he was doing a really good job. Yeah. But I was lucky because I had prepped my birth team like you told me to. And so she and I were on the same page. Like she could read me. She knew what I needed. We had practiced the different practices that we had with you, like how I want to be touched is by everybody, like not just my partner, but by Sydney as well, my doula. I'm like, all right, it's August 8th. Let's drive up to Encinitas. I'm 30 minutes away from Encinitas where my OBGYN works. Let's go in then. So we drive in at midnight. We get there. I get to pick my own room. And I'm like, okay, they give me the biggest room. I'm like, amazing. This is great. Let's set up shop. I have a little candles everywhere that I'm starting to set up because I'm taking the Voltives from not the glass, but I had the plastic ones. I'm like, I'm going to make this like my cave still. I want it dark, but this is like my light to set the mood. So we start setting up and they check my cervix and they're like, you're only at 1 centimeter. And I'm like, there's no freaking way. It's been 26 hours at this point. There's no way I'm at 1 centimeter. She goes, I'm sorry, you are. And I'm like, okay, just lie to me. And she's like, okay, you're at 1.5, 2 centimeters. I'm like, perfect. You can lie to me. Like, so I can will it to happen. And so she gave me 2 options. You can stay here and wait for it to progress, or you can go home and be more comfortable. So of course I'm like, let's go home and be more comfortable. She's like, just call back in the morning for when you are feeling like you have progressed. So 8 a.m. happens. I'm still having contractions every 3 to 4 minutes, but it's not lasting that whole hour long. We call back and they tell us all the rooms are full. I can't come in. And it's only been 8 hours. I'm like, what do you mean? There was no rooms. I was able to pick my room. And all of a sudden now all the rooms are full. What the heck? And I thought September was like the big, like people have the most babies in September. I don't know what was happening.
People have sex between Thanksgiving and New Year's.
Yeah.
And it's just busy. But September is the busiest, but August can be just as tricky. Yeah.
It was tricky. So I knew that could happen and we'd have a plan B. And so I was like, all right, I guess we're going to La Jolla Scripps, but we won't have my OBGYN. So we call La Jolla and they're like, no, we have no room for her. So you can't come here either. And I'm like, wait, okay. So we had a plan A, we had a plan B. We don't have a plan C. Like, now what do we do? I'm not working with my midwife. I can't labor at home. Like, Sydney, love you, but you don't know what you don't know either. So I don't know. And so we call Encinitas back and they're like, okay, look, we'll check her in the hallway. Just bring her. So we drive back up to Encinitas and they put me in a utility closet. And there's a gurney in the utility closet. It's cramped. It only fits me and Spencer. There's equipment everywhere. There's wires everywhere. And they check me again and they tell me, oh, you're only at 2 centimeters. And I'm like, there's no freaking way that I have been laboring 3 to 4 minute contractions and I'm only at 2 centimeters. And I'm like, this is impossible. I'm also working with a nurse that I didn't respect and she kept coming in and interrupting my labor. So I like have my blindfold on and every time she comes in, I'm like, okay, what? And she's, why do you have your blindfold on? And I'm like, because you're interrupting my labor. And I think this is what's stalling me now. So I'm trying to progress and I just looked crazy with my blindfold on, but I'm so happy that you told us to get one of those because that made it peaceful for me.
So when they're chatty and they don't realize they're just coming in chatting and talking and you're like, I'm in the middle of like, it disrupts everything and they don't realize it. And so, yeah, the blindfold can keep you in a cave and you can put your hand up and be like, leave me alone.
Yeah. And it was crazy because we were in this closet because there was no beds and we were waiting for a bed to open up and her friend was outside, like in the rest area. She's knocking on the window, waving to her friend. She goes, that's my friend. That's my friend right there. Do you see them? And I'm like, in what world do you think I want all of my business to be shown to? I mean, it's fine. Like at this point, like who cares? But also, what are you doing?
Just not connected to the moment of what's actually happening. Holy cow.
Yeah. But I had you to have my blindfold and I had earplugs if I needed them. I had music because it was so small in there. But she kicks me out because I'm only 2 centimeters and they need the closet for someone who has a more progressed labor. So I'm very lucky that my appointment for that week was in an hour. So we drive from the hospital to Dr. Cap's office and I see the nurse midwife and she checks me and she goes, oh no, dude, you're 5 centimeters. Let's get you back into the closet. And I'm like, I'm 5 centimeters. I knew it. I knew I couldn't just be 2. And she's like, yeah, we just needed to see each other. And maybe that's true. I adore her so much. Maybe my body just completely relaxed.
Absolutely.
And when I saw her, and so Cap comes in and he's like, I'm so sorry. One, you look crazy. He didn't say that, but like the look on his face, I was like, I know I look disheveled. Like,
I mean, 2 days of labor in your hair. Yeah, I bet
yeah,
you
my
did
hair
look
was probably so insane. And he's like, do you care if I reserve the closet again for you? Like if it's open? I'm like, yes, get me the closet. So he gets me the closet. I get the closet back and I'm back in there for the next 5 hours. It was perfect. And then I just labored up until eventually a room opens up. I'm laboring through all of that. I'm doing the peanut ball. That was awful. It just hurt so much, which I just think it hurt for me because my baby, I was just so depleted at that point. I wasn't eating, I wasn't drinking. I was trying my best, but it was like I just was tired by that point. So we slept in the hospital on the second night. And at 5 a.m, it's 56 hours by this point. I came out and I said, I'm done. I'm not going to be able to push if I don't get any rest, and I need an epidural. And I am very thankful going through your course because as a naturopathic doctor, I would have been a little more traumatized that I wasn't able to push through with the whole natural part. But I would rather have the epidural than try for the C-section, just have a little bit more control just so I could see if I could do it vaginally.
Yeah, but you're using the epidural as a tool at that point. You're not using it out of fear. You're not using it out of, I'm terrorized as to what's going to be happening to me. It's so different. It's a physical body. And we know from your birth and labor, it was exactly what needed to happen at that time.
Yeah, so crazy. And unfortunately, there was a woman who was giving birth to a baby and she was high on fentanyl. And so I could hear the nurses talking about like the fentanyl baby across the hallway and their conversation about that. And then I look over while they're putting the epidural in me and I see that it has fentanyl in it. I'm like, oh my God. But I don't care at this point. I'm like, I need it. And yes, it was a tool. And your class really prepped me for that so that I could change my perception and the conversation on it. So if I did have this conversation with people in my field later, it's like, okay, this was a big prep for me because I didn't have birth trauma at all.
Well, and your first text to me was, I had an amazing 67-hour labor. My birth was amazing. That was the text I got. And I'm like, well, wait till I tell you about your placenta.
So I get the epidural. It was the best thing ever. Jokes were just flying. We were all having a great time after we got the epidural. And then I got to sleep for 2 hours and Spencer got to sleep for 2 hours. So we were like snoring when we woke up and it was like, okay, let's see where we're at. I was still at 5 centimeters, unfortunately. And so I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I'm trying to relax. I'm trying to do all the things. Nothing's working. I'm just like, whatever at this point, what will be, will be. And they popped my water. So I had asked for them to pop my water. I believe it was right when I got my big room to myself. And they said no. And it was my nurse midwife that touched me. And I was at 5 centimeters. My body had relaxed with her. She was like, I just have this feeling that it's not the time. But then she was off her shift for the 12 hours. So then I got a new person and they said yes. But it had been about like 8 hours later that I was able to get my water popped. And so they popped my water. I'm like, okay, that was like not crazy. You prepped us with that too. Not
Because
crazy.
it can be crazy.
Yeah, especially the tool. So they popped the water. And then pretty shortly after that, we started having more of the contractions and baby's heartbeat was doing good. And then they were like, let's push. Oh my God, this poor man. So he is a DO, so doctor of osteopathy. He's really great for apparently for surgery. I didn't need him for surgery, but he is really great for advocacy for letting the women have the birth experience they want. Like he is a full believer that women have been doing this forever, like their bodies are intuitive and we can innately, birth a child. So I was very lucky to have him, but he doesn't come until the end. So he's helping you throughout the whole, like while you're pregnant, and then he's there when you need to catch the baby. So he walks in and he's a Greek man and he's like, I feel like I'm in an Orthodox Greek church with all my candles everywhere. He's like, I've never seen anyone do this before. And I'm like, I needed to set the mood and we need to have good music on. So when the baby comes, they have a good song when they come out. And so I'm pushing in 45 minutes, and all of a sudden, right before my baby comes out, it just a huge gush of water just encapsulates Cap. And he did not like that. He was like, like, did I need to teach somebody how to pop a water back? But it was another OBGYN. So that did it. So I was like, well, just not tell him who did that. But yeah, then we got Jack, and my husband hates when I say this, but you think again, it's going to be like the movies. It's a boy, it's a girl. No one is telling me it's a boy, it's a girl. And so I'm like, what do we have? What is it? And the nurse is like, I don't know. And she's trying to lift up the leg and find the penis or the vagina. And Spencer's like, I don't know either. And the nurse is like, no, this is really confusing. And then Cap's like, for great Jesus Christ, somebody let her know what she has. And they're like, it's a boy. And I'm like, okay, finally I get it's a boy experience. But I was like, and no shade to this at all, but I'm like, do I need to choose the gender of the sex now for the baby? Do I have a hermaphrodite? Like, what is this? And so I'm like, that's going to be stressful. I'm like sleep deprived. It's almost 72 hours of no sleep. And I'm like, I can't make that decision. That's a big decision. So very
Isn't
lucky.
it funny just with everybody muddling through it and your brain's, oh my gosh, oh, the next step of what I had no plan for that. Like,
No plan.
what if I mess up? What if I get the wrong gender with this
Yeah.
baby?
Yeah. I
Oh, it's
want
so
them to
funny.
want the one that they wanted. Yeah. So crazy. But it ended up being the best birth experience. It was long, but it was beautiful. And I just really appreciate like all the prep that I was able to do with you. So then I could have this experience.
So here's the part that I have consent to share because this was crazy tune. So I don't know anything about her labor other than 67 hours. It was amazing, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wow, I love that you loved that you were in labor for 67 hours. And here's this whole adventure you've heard. So I go and pick up the placenta. Sometimes that's the one thing I love about doing placentas. It tells a story. So I don't know anything about her birth. I get the placenta, I lay it out. The placenta that I see in front of me, I start sobbing over. Not because it was so beautiful, even though it was, and I'm going to put pictures here in the video so that you can see it. But her placenta showed a miracle like no miracle. So most of the time when you guys get your growth scans and then subsequent sonograms, they're going to check the cord, and there's something called a velamentous cord where cord doesn't solidly cement itself in the placenta, but yet it goes through the bag. So if you think about the bag, it's delicate, right? And the veins, which are your baby's oxygen supply, of velamentous cord, they thread themselves through the bag, which means it's a very delicate situation because the oxygen supply is within the bag. I have never seen a velamentous cord, for one, that it wasn't caught by several ultrasounds, because that can also happen too, that they don't catch it. But that, holy cow, when you see this cord, I want you to look at this. The miracle that happened with this labor is one, that the main part of the bag was down at the bottom, that her midwife, when she said, break my frickin' water, and the midwife said, my gut says not to do it. Why? We're at 5 centimeters. Why? That's a normal time to break water. She follows her intuition and says, something is telling me not to do it. I'm not going to do it. She gets to the hospital. No one breaks it. Another 8 hours. Okay. You also have to go back to how this baby was laboring. Okay. Stop, start, stop, start, not full commitment to an hour at a time. Stop, start, because the baby knows where its oxygen supply is. It knows. This is why we have to be conscious that our babies are a wise soul with a lot more information than we know, and not to just take water breaking as like no big deal, because I've seen it where it was a very big deal in a quick moment of an emergency C-section, which this could have been. That stop start labor a lot of times is, I know where my oxygen supply is. Sometimes it's a short cord and they know I only have a minute to get down. So they do that stop start labor to thin everything out, open everything up, and then they're out in 2 hours when they decide to come. Because babies understand the maneuverability, the oxygen supply, where everything is, way more than we do, because they're in there and they're wise souls. I like to think of them as large human beings in a tiny little body going, I know how to get out of this body, because they have an innate ability to foresee things that we can't see sometimes. Just like when a baby that doesn't turn because they're breech because they know they have a short cord or they know that they're compromised. I know in my gut, my body, my whole soul, the reason that oxygen supply stayed there, Mac, was because of your nutrition. So, for one, when I got the placenta, the blood hadn't drained out of those cords yet, which is why when you see this picture, you can see full, usually it's all drained out. That bag of waters was so strong, it was like a leather satchel. I have never, ever, I've had some that have been satchels. This one, like, this was a Gucci bag, you guys. It was so leather-like, and you could see right through it, but it was so strong because of your nutrition. Looking at all of the different factors of how this miracle came about, they go in with an amnio hook to break your waters. They nicked it maybe, and it caused a little leak, but your baby's head plugged that, protecting his oxygen supply. And then he's out in 45 minutes because he knows I got to get out.
Mm-hmm.
If they had broken that water ahead of time, he would have had no oxygen. Like that would have been not a good scene. If you hadn't had such good nutrition, that would not have been a good scene. Like I literally sobbed looking at that. I took picture after picture. I was bawling, bawling, bawling. I'm like, I don't even know how to talk to her about this. Holy shit. And it was all I could do not to call you and say, oh my gosh, you just don't even know. I'm like, nope, they're enjoying their stuff. And then when I went to her house, as I walked in the door, I'm seeing the dog and I'm crying. Then I see the hurricane candles. Then I'm like replaying the 67 hours and I'm wondering, like, was it stop start? Like I can picture what it was because my gut and intuition was like, this little boy knew what he was doing. He's supposed to be here. Oh my gosh, the right doctor, the right time, the right place. And I really do apologize for being such a basket case when I came in and just started crying. And I'm like, I have to show you these pictures. Blah, blah, blah. I still get emotional thinking about it because we don't witness miracles like that in everyday lives. And Jack's life is a freaking miracle. Then when I showed you, I think you were kind of like, what the heck?
I was in such a daze still, but you told me my birth story. Like, I don't even think we like went into it yet. And you were like, I could tell exactly what had happened. It was just another one of those moments where life is so much bigger than you realize. And it took my breath away to hear that you knew exactly what had happened just by seeing the placenta. And I am very lucky with the tarot card reader telling me I had dead ovaries because me and Spence wouldn't have done all that prep together to create a good placenta.
Yeah, I still have waves of goosebumps when I think about it because if the consciousness of going into that birth was exactly what needed to happen. And I mean, you can't script that, you guys. You cannot script something like that. I appreciate how much diligence and consciousness you guys went into that with because that's exactly what Jack needed to get here. And what an amazing birth story. And the fact that you literally, I did 67 hours of labor. It was amazing. And I'm just like, oh, I don't hear that every day.
No.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. And that because you did so much prep, how did that transition into your postpartum preparedness? Because the connection was there and you had the support, your mom was there.
Yeah. The only thing is, I wish I had known how it can be difficult to breastfeed. I think that was the only thing that I had that I think of as in the realm of trauma or something that I wish was different is the lactation consultant. You know, you give birth and then it's immediate, like skin to skin, which is great if you have a doctor who believes in that, and they should believe in that. And then you start breastfeeding. I don't have the right shaped nipple. My son has a tongue tie, and so he couldn't latch. And so I wasn't as prepared for that. You know, you're so depleted, and you know, you got to advocate for yourself like during the time. And so you can have the best possible transition. But then you have the baby, and you don't realize you need to keep advocating for yourself because the lactation consultant was like, I don't like your nipples. I'm unimpressed by how you're breastfeeding. And like, I don't need to be told that you're unimpressed.
Isn't it amazing the language used? What the heck?
I had to tell her, I was like, if you tell me you're unimpressed one more time, like, I'm going to ask you to leave. Because she just kept saying it. And I'm like, oh, no, I heard you the first 3 times that you just told me you're unimpressed. Can we use different lingo? And I get it. She literally walked in, saw my nipples, and goes, ugh, another one of these. They're all the same nipple shape today. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means.
And all I know is that now I feel inept to nurse my baby and sustain life. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. So that was the only traumatic experience that I had. And honestly, it did carry out for a while because, like, I had to snip the tie. You do not have to do that. I just felt like I needed to do that because it was so severe. It was to the tip of his tongue. So everyone was like, "Who's telling you that he has a tongue tie?" And I didn't realize that was like a taboo thing, that nurses aren't allowed to say that and they can get in trouble for saying that. But it was clear as day that this kid had a tongue tie. Like his dad had a tongue tie until he was 25 and he got it snipped and it was to the tip of the tongue. Yeah, so that was crazy, but being able to just be still and like after seeing you, you were like the first like nurturing like care plan person that I saw and you were like this is a miracle and I'm like okay, that was a really good way to take my mind off of oh, I'm not doing this right cuz I didn't have that throughout the whole labor really and because I had prepped with you so much on my body, it knows what it's doing. But being told that I had shitty nipples that and I couldn't latch because we just weren't compatible in that way. It was hard, but we did it for a while. But the postpartum, I'd say it was really beautiful because it was just like time stood still for the first 2 weeks.
And you also said, if I don't get back to you, because I want to talk more about my placenta and everything, if I don't get back to you, it's because we are taking 30, 40 days to be with the baby, be in a cocoon. We're not answering phone calls. We're not doing emails. We're not working. And I was like, yes, if you can do that and you're doing it, you know?
Yeah, I think it's in Chinese culture. I'm sure it's in some other ones, for sure Chinese culture though. But yeah, the first 40 days postpartum is considered like the fourth trimester. Our babies come out before they're ready, actually, because the head can't fit through the canal. So you are still taking care of this life force that should or should not be on the outside yet. God doesn't make mistakes. So I think by design, we're okay. But it's a lot to have such a tiny, beautiful person that you're now taking care of while you're recovering with a dinner sized plate wound in your body. And in the first 40 days, you're supposed to stay in bed and like for the first week, and then you can sit on the bed for the second week. And then the third week, you can be around the bed. But it's to help your pelvic floor reposition, it's to help the organs get back into position.
It's to help your baby regulate his or her nervous system on your body. It's to help your baby do exogestation, which is being held and close to your heartbeat. Yeah, there's so much with that.
Yeah, so I highly recommend doing that as well and taking that time to process the birth if you have the opportunity to be home right after you give birth and get a meal train. Don't be weird or make it weird. People want to take care of you. So put out a meal train for yourself and ask people to make you some nourishing meals so then you can heal and you can be with your baby.
Absolutely. It's so important that we take care of ourselves because our society doesn't do it anymore. Like, we need to think about that. And nobody realizes, for one, I can prep you all I want about breastfeeding. You can't judge everything and you can't plan for everything. You can learn, but then it takes one nurse to unnerve because you're so impressionable at that time. And I've done another birth story where the mom said that she told me this, this, and this, and I wouldn't be able to produce milk and my baby would starve and I'd have to supplement. And she's like, I even told her, I'm not that mom. I will supplement if I need to. But she said, I was so devastated by that. And I wish people understood, even sometimes you go to the pediatrician afterwards and immediately it's, you're not doing it right.
Yep. Yeah. It was crazy. I was like, wow, mom guilt within the first couple hours of the baby being born. And it's intense. You definitely feel like, oh, I already fucked up this child. And it's because I don't have the right nipple shape. And I'm tired and I don't really want to learn right now, but I have to. And yeah, it's just insane. But I do think that having a conversation with your partner, like you prep how you want to be treated during the birth process, but then afterwards, like Spence took care of the baby. You know, he would pass the baby to me for the midnight feeds and every couple hour feeds during the night. But he really took it on himself to be the person that took care of Jack while I was recovering in the first 40 days. And if you don't have a partner that's willing to do that for you, like you need to have that conversation and set expectations that you're going to be depleted. It really is a mental game and physical game after that. And so having that support is where I think less postpartum depression happens because you feel more connected. You don't feel like everything's on you and you're not doing it correctly. So having a partner that supports you in that retrospect was really helpful for me.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yay, Spencer. Tell him yay for that. That's awesome. Awesome. And now Mac helps people get pregnant, helps people get their fertility online. And now you can see, even with her expert experience, because she's lived it, she practices what she preaches. And obviously, I'm in the menopause stage and she's helping me get organized as well. Multi-talented doctor. And I appreciate you sharing your story today. There's so much to this story. And I just appreciate that people get to learn and hopefully help other people, share it with friends and family who will need the information earlier rather than later.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. I love working with you and talking to you about all of this. You're so multifaceted as well. And so it's just been really cool to dive back into what a crazy experience that was 10 months ago. I've known you for over a year now. And it's just a blessing how life experiences can bring you to up another part of your calling.
Yeah. And it's been phenomenal working with you both places, getting my poop straight and doing vagina stuff with you. It's awesome.
Hey.
Full spectrum. All right. Thank you, everybody. And we will see everybody next week.
Thanks again. Bye.
Thanks for joining us today. And remember, it's your body, your choice, and finding your voice is your power. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us in all the places, and go to birtheducationcenter.com for our blog and more online education classes. And we'll see you next week.